Hey guys, it's me, Miss Norris, and today, in honor of Black History Month, I'd like to share an important read aloud with you of the story of Ruby Bridges. The story of Ruby Bridges was written in 1995 by Robert Coles and is illustrated by George Ford, and it tells the story of a real life person named Ruby Bridges. If you're ready to hear this important story, I'm ready to share it with you. Here we go. I'll get close so you can see. This is Ruby Bridges, and she's made a lot of people very angry. And when you hear why, I think it'll make you very angry. This is the story of Ruby Bridges. And like I said at the beginning of this story, this is a true story about a real person. And this is a quote from Ruby Bridges' mother. She says, "Our Ruby taught us all a lot. She became someone who helped change our country. She was part of history just like generals and presidents are part of history. They are leaders, and so was Ruby. She led us away from hate, and she led us nearer to knowing each other, the white folks and the black folks." Ruby's mother. And so we know that Ruby is going to do an awful lot to change our country. And we're about to find out how. This is Ruby. Ruby Bridges was born in a small cabin near Tylerton, Mississippi. "We were very poor, very, very poor," Ruby said. "My daddy worked picking crops. We just barely got by. There were times when we didn't have much to eat. The people who owned the land were bringing in machines to pick the crops, so my daddy lost his job, and that's when we had to move. I remember us leaving. I was 4, I think." So Ruby was very little when she was born, and when she was born in Mississippi, people were starting to change over from having people that picked crops to machines. And because Ruby's daddy was someone who picked crops, he lost his job and they had to move. And she was very young, but this is something that she remembers. In 1957, the family moved to New Orleans. Ruby's father became a janitor. Her mother took care of the children during the day. After they were tucked in bed, Ruby's mother went to work scrubbing floors in a bank. Every Sunday, the family went to church. "We wanted our children to be near God's Spirit," Ruby's mother said. "We wanted them to start feeling close to Him from the very start." So when they moved to a place called New Orleans, which is in Louisiana. And their dad worked in the daytime, and Mama took care of the kids. And at nighttime, Daddy stayed home with the kids, and Mama went to work. And during the weekend, they all went to church. At that time, black children and white children went to separate schools in New Orleans. The black children were not able to receive the same education as the white children. It wasn't fair, and it was against the nation's law. In 1960, a judge ordered 4 black girls to go to 2 white elementary schools. 3 of the girls were sent to McDonough 19. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges was sent to 1st grade in the William Frantz Elementary School. So this judge says, these 4 black girls are going to go to an all-white elementary schools, and 3 of them all get to go together, even though that's scary, they're together. And Ruby is going to a different school all by herself. Imagine going to a new school is very scary, but going to a new school where you don't know anybody and you are the only person like you at your whole school must be very scary. Ruby's parents were proud that their daughter had been chosen to take part in an important event in American history. They went to church. "We sat there and prayed to God," Ruby's mother said, "that we'd all be strong and we'd have courage and we'd get through any trouble. And Ruby would be a good girl and she'd hold her head up high and be a credit to her own people and a credit to all the American people. We prayed long and we prayed hard. So the family were both excited that Ruby was chosen, but also nervous, and they really wanted God to be on her side. And they prayed. On Ruby's first day, a large crowd of angry white people gathered outside the Frantz Elementary School. The people carried signs that said they didn't want black children in a white school. People called Ruby names. Some wanted to hurt her. The city and state police did not help Ruby. The President of the United States ordered federal marshals to walk with Ruby into the school building. The marshals carried guns. So all of these white people were not happy to have Ruby at school, and even the policemen of their town in New Orleans said that they weren't going to help a citizen of our country, a child. And the president had to have a marshal, which is kind of like the president's policeman, walk her into school, and they were worried that something bad was going to happen, so they took guns to protect both Ruby and themselves from these angry people. Can you imagine how scary that would be? Every day, for weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked to Frantz School surrounded by marshals, wearing a clean dress and a bow in her hair and carrying her lunch pail. Ruby walked slowly for the first few blocks. As Ruby approached the school, she saw a crowd of people marching up and down the street. Men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. So, kind of like Martin Luther King Jr. that we read about a couple of weeks ago, Ruby Bridges did not meet their hate with hate. She met their hate with silence, as far as we can tell so far. And could you imagine how hard it would be to go to school if every day you went, someone was yelling at you and threatening you and making it so hard for you to go to school? The white people in the neighborhood would not send their children to school. When Ruby got inside the building, she was all alone except for her teacher, Miss Hurley. There were no other children to keep Ruby company, to play with and learn with, to eat lunch with. But every day, Ruby went into the classroom with a big smile on her face, ready to get down to the business of learning. She was polite and she worked well at her desk, Miss Hurley said. She enjoyed her time there. She didn't seem nervous or anxious or irritable or scared. She seemed as normal and relaxed as any child I'd ever taught. So, Ruby began learning how to read and write in an empty classroom in an empty building. So people were so angry to have someone of a different color than them at their school that they didn't send their kids to school. So Ruby was in a classroom all by herself, in a whole building, all by herself, just her and her teacher. And her teacher said she wasn't mean or mad or angry or scared. She was just ready to learn like any other child she's ever taught before. But could you imagine being so angry at someone's skin color that you wouldn't want to get smarter yourself? Sometimes I'd look at her and wonder how she did it, said Miss Hurley. How she went by those mobs and sat here all by herself, and yet seemed so relaxed and comfortable. That's a good point, Miss Hurley. It would be really hard to be relaxed and comfortable if you started your day with people yelling at you and threatening to kill you. Miss Hurley would question Ruby in order to find out if the girl was really nervous and afraid, even though she seemed so calm and confident. But Ruby kept saying she was fine. She was doing fine. The teacher decided to wait and see if Ruby would keep on being so relaxed and hopeful, or if she'd gradually begin to wear down, or even decide that she no longer wanted to go to school. So Miss Hurley, she thought, she can't really be this calm and cool with all these kids grown-ups and kids yelling at her, and the policeman not helping her or anything. But Ruby just kept saying she was fine, and Miss Hurley worried that this was going to wear her down, that she might not want to go to school anymore. Then, one morning, something happened. Miss Hurley stood by a window in her classroom as she usually did, watching Ruby walk toward the school. Suddenly, Ruby stopped, right in front of the mob of howling and screaming people. She stood there facing all those men and women. She seemed to be talking to them. So today, Miss Hurley is seeing something outside her window that she doesn't usually see, and that is that Ruby has stopped in front of all those people shouting at her, and she's facing them, she's looking at them, and it looks like she's talking to them. And now Miss Hurley is curious about what's happening. Miss Hurley saw Ruby's lips moving and wondered what Ruby could be saying. The crowd seemed ready to kill her. The marshals were frightened. They tried to persuade Ruby to move along. They tried to hurry her into the school, but Ruby wouldn't budge. Then Ruby stopped talking and walked into the school. So everybody's kind of freaking out. The people are still yelling. The marshals, who are supposed to be big and tough, they're even getting a little scared and saying, come on, let's go. And Ruby won't move until she's finished doing whatever it is she's doing. And you can see this guy, he's watching to make sure that she's safe. And Ruby looks like she's talking to everybody. You can see there's people yelling and showing they're having signs. And then Ruby finishes, and they all go inside the school. When she went into the classroom, Miss Hurley asked her what happened. Miss Hurley told Ruby that she'd been watching and that she was surprised when Ruby stopped and talked with the people in the mob. Ruby became irritated. I didn't stop to talk with them, she said. Ruby, I saw you talking, Miss Hurley said. I saw your lips moving. I wasn't talking, said Ruby. I was praying. I was praying for them. Every morning, Ruby had stopped a few blocks away from school to say a prayer for the people who hated her. This morning, she forgot until she was already in the middle of the angry mob. So Ruby's angry to think that Miss Hurley thought she was just talking to those people, to the mob of people that didn't like her. She said, I wasn't talking to them. I was praying for them. And imagine how hard that would be to wish good things for people that have been being so mean and so hateful to you every single day when you're just a little girl trying to go learn some stuff at school. When school was over for the day, Ruby hurried through the mob as usual. After she walked a few blocks and the crowd was behind her, Ruby said the prayer she repeated twice a day, before and after school. Oh, so we're going to get to hear what Ruby's prayers were for these people. Please, God, try to forgive those people, because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing. So you could forgive them, just like you did those folks a long time ago when they said terrible things about you. So she asks God to forgive those people for being mean because they don't know what they're doing. And to forgive like God had forgiven people that did the same thing to him. That's pretty brave for a first grader. Now this is the afterwards, what happened at the end of the story. Later that year, 2 white boys joined Ruby at the Frantz Elementary School. Their parents were tired of seeing the boys get into mischief around the house when they could have been at school learning. The mob became very angry when the first white boys went back to school, but those boys were soon joined by other children. We've been sitting back and letting our children get cheated out of an education because some people have tried to take the law into their own hands, one parent said. It's time for us to fight for the side of the law and for our kids' right to go to school and get their education. They all did get their education, Ruby and a growing number of boys and girls who went to school with her. By the time Ruby was in the second grade, the mobs had given up their struggle to scare Ruby and defeat the federal judge's order that New Orleans schools be desegregated so that children of all races might be in the same classroom. Year after year, Ruby went to Frantz School. She graduated from it, then went on to graduate school and high school. And went on to graduate from high school. Ruby Bridges is married to a building contractor and has 4 sons who attend school within New Orleans public school system. Now a successful businesswoman, she has created the Ruby Bridges Educational Foundation for the purposes of increasing parental involvement in schools. For further information about the information, you can write to the following address. And I'll zoom in on the address, but this book is fairly old, and I'm not sure if this is still the correct address if you wanted to contact the Ruby Bridges Foundation. But Ruby Bridges is still alive. She is, I believe, 67 years old now and still probably runs her company and takes care of her children who are also grown. And imagine that this story didn't happen that awfully very long ago. Ruby Bridges was brave in first grade and continues to be brave now as an older woman. And because of Ruby Bridges, schools started to become more and more commonly desegregated, like the law said. And thank you, Ruby Bridges. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this story, please hit the thumbs up button at the bottom of the page. If you are already a subscriber, thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me. If you're not a subscriber yet, please click that subscribe button down at the bottom of the page, and don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can hear about new content. I hope to see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.